Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Y&R Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. On Monday's episode of The Young and the Restless, the air at Danny Romalotti and Christine Blair's wedding reception was brimming with celebration, laughter, and the kind of chaos only Genoa City could provide, as friends and family gathered to honor the newlyweds, their smiles radiant, their love palpable. Yet under the surface currents of jealousy, curiosity, and past entanglements subtly wove themselves into the fabric of the evening. From the outset, the reception was a tapestry of heartfelt speeches, amusing anecdotes, and the occasional awkward moment that inevitably accompanies any event of such magnitude, beginning with the lively chatter and clinking glasses as guests reminisced about old memories, shared inside jokes, and teased the happy couple with playful, sometimes embarrassing stories of their courtship, their history, and the well-known escapades of their friends and family. Amid the swirling conversations and the scent of flowers and fine food, Phyllis Summers made her entrance, her presence immediately commanding attention as she walked in beside Kane Ashby, her usually calculated smile in place but with an undertone that hinted at the schemes and judgments always simmering beneath her poised exterior. And while some guests were polite enough to acknowledge her, others instinctively tensed at the possibility of one of Phyllis's signature interjections into moments meant for unadulterated joy. Determined to make her presence felt and perhaps more importantly, to assert a stake in the celebratory proceedings, Phyllis insisted on raising a glass to Danny and Christine, delivering a toast that was awkward at best and laced with her own subtle agenda. Her words a careful blend of civility, sarcasm, and a faint but discernible edge of criticism that made even the seasoned Christine Blair pause, though she quickly reminded herself that nothing could dampen her joy on this day, urging Phyllis to continue, if only to provide a moment of unintended entertainment. And even as the words tumbled out, a mixture of clumsiness and sincerity, Christine found herself conceding inwardly that the toast wasn't half bad considering its source, a small acknowledgement that, for once, Phyllis had managed to toe the line between disruption and compliment, a balancing act she seemed to execute with cautious precision before excusing herself and came to retreat upstairs, leaving the reception hall to resume its flow of laughter, clinking glasses, and whispered speculations about what the future might hold for everyone present, knowing full well that the events of the evening were far from concluded. As Phyllis and Kane ascended to their suite, the atmosphere transformed from public festivity to private scheming, their conversation shifting to a more intimate, conspiratorial tone as Kane, ever perceptive, pressed Phyllis to demonstrate that she was indeed moving forward from her past entanglements, and Phyllis, always ready with a provocative suggestion, proposed a game that symbolically mirrored the emotional baggage they both carried. A playful, risque exercise of shedding literal clothing to represent the figurative burdens that had long weighed upon them, including Kane's unresolved issues with Lily Winters and the disapproval he feared from his children, and Phyllis's own emotional entanglements that had, until now, defined much of her adult life. With a mixture of laughter, flirtation, and a hint of tension, they removed layers of their past, momentarily freeing themselves from the weight of guilt, resentment, and unresolved longing, an act of vulnerability that seamlessly transitioned into a more physical intimacy as they hit the sheets once more, merging their playful confrontation with undeniable passion, each movement a testament to their shared history, mutual attraction, and the unspoken understanding that while their choices were sometimes messy, the connection they shared was undeniably potent, a complex interweaving of affection, desire, and strategic alignment that only they could navigate. Meanwhile, downstairs, the atmosphere was entirely different, filled with the nervous energy and anticipation surrounding Daniel Romalotti Jr.'s upcoming musical performance with Tessa Porter, a collaboration that promised to honor the newlyweds while showcasing the unique talents and chemistry of the performers themselves. Daniel, however, found himself gripped by an intense, almost paralyzing anxiety, convinced that he would falter, that his nerves would ruin the delicate balance required to deliver a flawless, heartfelt performance, and he confessed to Tessa that perhaps she would have to proceed alone, a suggestion met with gentle resistance as Tessa, ever supportive and perceptive, offered him a pep talk designed not merely to boost his confidence but to remind him of the joy inherent in music, the shared connection with his audience, and the emotional significance of this particular moment, and slowly Daniel allowed himself to be persuaded, to re-engage with the performance, to step into the light alongside Tessa with a renewed commitment to make this moment memorable, not just for the couple being celebrated but for everyone in attendance. Their song unfolded as a gift of melodic intimacy, each note resonating with sincerity, each gesture and glance a reflection of their trust in one another, and their shared understanding of the emotional weight carried in each performance, transforming the space into a microcosm of celebration, anticipation, and artistic expression. Before the ceremony of speeches resumed, alternating between heartfelt tributes and the occasional humorous anecdote, keeping the guests engaged and emotionally invested as Danny and Christine retreated upstairs to change, seeking a brief moment of privacy in which they could savor the newlywed intimacy that the whirlwind of the reception had so far allowed only in fleeting glimpses. It was in the hallway outside the bridal suite that Christine and Danny's private bubble intersected with Phyllis and Kane's scheming world, an almost cinematic encounter where the newlyweds, still flushed from their own shared moments, came face to face with Phyllis and Kane, their entrance initially perceived as a threat by Danny, who braced himself for potential interference, only to be met with Phyllis's disarmingly courteous remarks and insistence that she genuinely meant them bon voyage, a declaration delivered with a mixture of sincerity, performance, and her trademark inscrutability, leaving Danny cautiously reassured yet unable to entirely dismiss the possibility of underlying motives. After exchanging pleasantries, Christine and Danny returned to the gathering downstairs, joining the guests who showered them with flower petals as they departed for their Paris honeymoon, the gesture emblematic of the hope, joy, and communal support that weddings often conjure, even as whispers and speculation about future complications continued to ripple quietly through the crowd. Amidst the celebrations, Nina Webster found a quiet moment to speak with Christine about an unexpected floral delivery, revealing that Esther Valentine had been responsible for sending the mums that had brightened the room but inadvertently triggered Christine's allergies, a detail Nina had withheld to spare Christine discomfort, demonstrating the nuanced interplay of kindness, secrecy, and interpersonal diplomacy that often defined the complex social web of Genoa City's residents. Meanwhile, Devin Winters found himself in a rare moment of levity, dancing with Abby Winters, the pair reveling in the lingering sense of joy and intimacy that a honeymoon atmosphere, though temporally shifted, allowed them to experience, a poignant reminder that love, connection, and happiness could manifest even in unexpected spaces and moments, a testament to the resilience of affection in the lives of those who dared to open themselves to it despite past disappointments. As the evening progressed, Tessa and Daniel found themselves alone, sharing an intimate, tender moment that served as a counterbalance to the more performative aspects of the reception, a private interlude in which they could connect away from the eyes of the world, reaffirming both their personal bond and their commitment to the shared artistic endeavor that had initially brought them together in the context of the celebration. As the evening in Genoa City carried on with an almost surreal mixture of celebration and underlying tension, Phyllis Summers and Kane Ashby's presence in the shadows of the Grand Hall lingered like a subtle storm on the horizon, their eyes discreetly following the ebb and flow of guests, noting interactions, subtle gestures, and fleeting expressions with the precision of seasoned observers who had long learned that information was power, that secrets, even small ones, could become the fulcrum upon which relationships pivoted and destinies shifted. Their initial witness of Daniel Romalotti Jr. and Tessa Porter sharing a stolen kiss was only the beginning, a spark that could ignite a conflagration of gossip, jealousy, or opportunity, depending on how it was handled, and as they stood near the periphery of the reception space, the two exchanged glances that carried volumes, Kane's contemplative, measuring, and slightly wary, while Phyllis's eyes glittered with the thrill of discovery, her mind already spinning through the possibilities of leverage, subtle interventions, or future manipulations that could tilt outcomes in ways advantageous to her. As was her nature, always calculating, always anticipating the next ripple in the ever-shifting waters of Genoa City's social scene. While Phyllis contemplated potential narratives to weave around what she had seen, Kane remained cautiously attuned to the emotional consequences of such actions, aware that intervening too overtly could trigger unintended fallout, particularly with Daniel and Tessa, whose budding relationship, though young, had already endured scrutiny, judgment, and the pressure of familial expectations. Yet, there was an undeniable excitement in being privy to the intimate moments of others, in witnessing passion that unfolded unscripted, that existed raw and unmediated, and for both of them the temptation to engage, directly or indirectly, was palpable, a magnetic pull that they each resisted only partially, knowing full well that in Genoa City, To know is to wield influence, and influence, when applied judiciously, can reshape outcomes with remarkable precision. Meanwhile, back in the reception hall, the atmosphere maintained its delicate balance between joy and anticipation, with guests continuing to share stories, clink glasses, and bask in the collective happiness of Danny and Christine's milestone. Yet beneath this veneer of celebration, subtle currents of curiosity, envy, and interpersonal complexity ran deep. Christine Blair, ever gracious and composed, navigated the room with effortless charm, greeting friends and family while masking any lingering irritation that might have arisen from Phyllis's earlier toast, maintaining the outward appearance of serenity and poise, though inwardly she catalogued each interaction with the keen perception of someone who had long learned to read between the lines, to anticipate the unspoken motives of those around her, and to protect both herself and her newlywed husband from potential disruptions. Danny Romalotti, for his part, oscillated between relief and lingering tension, his natural exuberance tempered by a faint awareness that the celebrations were far from over in the metaphorical sense, that the intricate web of Genoa City relationships ensured that even the happiest occasions carried seeds of challenge, complication, and occasionally outright confrontation, and so he moved through the reception with a careful balance of enthusiasm and vigilance, ensuring that his joy did not inadvertently signal vulnerability to those who might exploit it, all while stealing occasional glances toward Tessa and Daniel, noting the rare moments of closeness that reminded him of the vibrancy and unpredictability of youth, talent, and passion converging in the most unexpected of spaces. As Phyllis and Cain lingered near the edge of the room, their eyes subtly tracking Daniel and Tessa's every movement, the newlyweds upstairs experienced a brief interlude of intimacy and reflection, savoring their private moments before returning to the collective attention of friends and family. Danny and Christine, though newly joined in marriage, had long cultivated an awareness that public celebrations often masked private complexities, that appearances could be curated yet emotions remained stubbornly authentic, and so even as they exchanged whispered laughter and shared fleeting touches, their minds remained partially attuned to the reception below, to the people whose opinions, judgments, and expectations formed an ever-present backdrop to their personal happiness. It was in these moments of shared consciousness, of simultaneous engagement with both the immediate joy and the surrounding social currents, that the true depth of their connection became evident, a connection that could withstand the scrutiny of observers, the interventions of friends or rivals, and the inevitable drama that arose when lives, loves, and ambitions intersected in the compact yet intensely interwoven world of Genoa City. Meanwhile, Tessa and Daniel, their earlier kiss lingering in memory and in sensation, moved with an unspoken understanding, an awareness that the performance they were about to give was not merely a musical offering but a symbolic declaration of commitment, support, and mutual trust. And as they prepared for their next set, each note, each lyric, carried layered meanings that only those attuned to the nuances of their relationship could fully appreciate. Daniel's initial panic had gradually dissolved under Tessa's patient encouragement, replaced by a growing sense of purpose, an acknowledgement that his talent, when coupled with genuine emotion and partnership, could transcend nerves, expectation, and the pervasive tension that sometimes characterized life in Genoa City, and that this moment, framed by celebration yet tinged with subtle observation, was a rare opportunity to express authenticity, courage, and artistry simultaneously. As their voices blended in harmony, the reception hall seemed to shift subtly, the ambient noise fading into the background as the sincerity of their performance resonated with listeners, eliciting smiles, subtle nods, and the occasional appreciative tear from those who understood the courage required to display vulnerability publicly, particularly in a city where reputations, rivalries, and personal histories often carried as much weight as actual accomplishments. Phyllis, watching from a discreet vantage point, felt a complex mixture of emotions as she observed Daniel and Tessa. There was intrigue, yes, and a spark of envy perhaps, a recognition of youthful authenticity that contrasted sharply with the strategic maneuvering she herself often relied upon to navigate social currents. Yet there was also a sense of satisfaction, a validation of her role as observer, arbiter, and occasional disruptor, knowing that her awareness of these intimate moments gave her insight into dynamics that might otherwise remain hidden. Cain, less overtly reactive but equally attentive, measured each glance, each gesture, and each nuance of interaction, considering the potential implications of this knowledge not only for Daniel and Tessa but for broader relational networks within the city, noting how alliances, affections, and jealousies might evolve in response to what had been witnessed, and how the careful management of information could maintain stability, encourage growth, or precipitate conflict depending on timing, discretion, and execution. Downstairs, as the reception continued to unfold, other guests found themselves caught in parallel currents of reflection, conversation, and subtle scheming. Nina Webster, having shared with Christine the backstory of the accidental allergic reaction to Esther Valentine's floral arrangement, experienced a sense of relief and satisfaction in having navigated a potential faux pas with tact and kindness, knowing that her discretion had preserved both social harmony and personal comfort. At the same time, Devin Winters and Abby Winters reveled in the opportunity to dance, to celebrate love in its multiple forms, and to experience a rare interlude of joy free from the immediate pressures of responsibility, expectation, or legacy, their movements across the dance floor a tangible representation of affection, connection, and the subtle healing power of shared experience. The reception, therefore, was not a simple aggregation of events but a multilayered exploration of human relationships, a dynamic interplay of observation, performance, desire, and restraint, each guest navigating their own motives and emotions while remaining subtly attuned to the currents created by those around them, a dance of social intelligence as intricate and precise as the choreography on the floor. As the evening deepened and the newlyweds' departure for Paris approached, the tension between public celebration and private observation intensified, and Phyllis and Kane's earlier witnessing of Daniel and Tessa's kiss gained a new dimension, transforming from a fleeting moment into a potential catalyst for future events, a hinge upon which numerous storylines could pivot. Their discretion, interpretation, and potential interventions became matters of consequence. In Genoa City, knowledge was rarely neutral, and the act of observing, of holding insight without immediate disclosure, carried both strategic and ethical weight, requiring careful consideration of timing, impact, and personal ambition. Phyllis, whose instincts often leaned toward assertive action, felt the urge to influence, to comment, to manipulate, yet also recognized the advantage in patience, in allowing events to unfold organically before determining how to position herself, a strategic calculation informed by years of experience navigating alliances, rivalries, and the complex emotional terrain of those around her. Kane, ever the cautious counterpart, balanced this impulsive energy with reflection, weighing consequences and evaluating outcomes, mindful that while opportunities existed for strategic engagement, missteps could reverberate, potentially destabilizing relationships, reputation, and long-term positioning in ways that neither intended nor desired. As the evening drew on, the glimmering lights of the reception hall cast soft reflections across polished surfaces, illuminating the faces of guests whose expressions fluctuated between joy, curiosity, and the subtle undercurrents of intrigue that always seem to accompany a gathering of Genoa City's most interconnected families, while upstairs, Danny and Christine took a moment to savor their honeymoon anticipation, sharing quiet laughter and affectionate glances as they reflected on the whirlwind of events that had led to this day, aware that even in their private moments, the world below continued to spin with stories, secrets, and opportunities for both celebration and conflict, and as they prepared to descend once more, their hearts buoyed by love yet tempered by the faint awareness of lingering complications, the narrative of the evening expanded in subtle but profound ways, the interplay of observation, secrecy, and relational dynamics creating a tension that was palpable to those attuned to such currents. Phyllis Summers, standing just out of sight with Kane Ashby, felt a surge of anticipation mixed with strategic calculation as she replayed the image of Daniel Romalotti Jr. leaning in toward Tessa Porter, their kiss brief yet loaded with emotional resonance, a gesture that, in the eyes of the observant, spoke of vulnerability, passion, and the potential for future entanglement, and she instinctively began considering how this knowledge could be used, whether to protect, to manipulate, or to assert influence, a mental exercise she had long mastered, yet one that never failed to thrill her, a reminder of the subtle power inherent in awareness, in presence, and in timing. Kane, equally aware but more measured in his approach, noted the careful balance required between intervention and observation, recognizing that Genoa City's residents often reacted unpredictably to revelations, that trust could be fragile, and that the mismanagement of sensitive knowledge could lead to unintended consequences, and so he observed Phyllis's enthusiasm with a mixture of admiration and caution, knowing that while her instincts often led to bold action, the ripple effects of those actions had to be carefully considered, lest what began as harmless insight spiral into chaos. Downstairs, the reception continued to hum with life, the air filled with music, laughter, and the occasional clinking of glasses, while conversations veered between light-hearted anecdotes and the subtle exchange of information, each interaction layered with meaning, each word potentially carrying weight beyond its immediate context. And as Tessa and Daniel navigated the crowd, offering smiles, bows, and quiet acknowledgments to friends and family, the tension of being observed by Phyllis and Kane created an almost imperceptible pressure, an awareness of eyes on them even as the couple attempted to focus on the joy and significance of the evening, a pressure that lent both intensity and poignancy to their interactions, making every glance, gesture, and shared word resonate with amplified significance. Phyllis, noting these subtle cues, allowed herself a small, satisfied smile, recognizing that even without overt interference, her mere awareness of the intimate moment she had witnessed provided a form of leverage, a quiet power over perception and potential narrative, while Kane remained attuned to the ethical and relational implications, aware that knowledge unshared yet understood could be as consequential as action itself, and that the choices they made in these fleeting hours could shape the emotional terrain for days, weeks, or even months to come. Meanwhile, Christine Blair and Danny Romalotti, momentarily removed from the observation point of Phyllis and Kane, embraced the fleeting privacy available to them amidst the structured chaos of the reception, savoring the tenderness of shared intimacy while remaining aware that their union, celebrated with petals and cheers, existed within a network of expectations, histories, and social dynamics that would inevitably continue to intersect with their lives, their happiness intertwined with both the support and scrutiny of friends, family, and rivals alike. Their love, while resilient, was not insulated from the complexities of Genoa City, where even joyous occasions often carried the weight of past disputes, lingering resentments, and the ever-present potential for surprises that could redefine relationships in ways both subtle and dramatic. And in this awareness, the newlyweds moved with a blend of exuberance and careful attentiveness, balancing the celebration of the moment with the strategic navigation of future possibilities. As the night advanced, the interplay of celebration and observation became increasingly pronounced, with Phyllis and Kane subtly maneuvering through the crowd to maintain vantage points while avoiding overt detection, their movements choreographed with the precision of those accustomed to navigating social minefields. And as they watched Daniel and Tessa exchange smiles, words, and small touches, the energy of the evening expanded from simple festivity into a study of relational dynamics, emotional resonance, and the potential for both disruption and opportunity. Every interaction between the young couple became magnified in significance. A glance, a hand lightly brushing an arm, a shared laugh, each a data point in the ongoing analysis of character, intention, and potential consequence that Phyllis and Kane engaged in, an exercise in social strategy that intertwined seamlessly with the human emotions at play, blurring the line between voyeuristic observation and strategic assessment, and creating a tension that, though unspoken, suffused the space with expectation, curiosity, and the faint edge of drama that soap opera audiences know will inevitably escalate. At one point, Phyllis allowed herself a moment of reflection, considering the long history of interventions, manipulations, and carefully timed disclosures that had characterized her life in Genoa City, recognizing that her role as witness in this moment mirrored her broader pattern of strategic engagement, a recognition that knowledge, discretion, and selective influence were among the most potent tools available to her, and that the delicate balance between observation and action required both patience and foresight, a mastery she had honed through countless personal and professional interactions over the years, each one reinforcing her understanding of human nature, ambition, and desire. Kane, attuned to the subtler nuances of emotional consequence, noted that while Phyllis's instinctive response leaned toward immediate engagement, the long game required careful calibration, a mindfulness of timing, relational impact, and the ethical considerations inherent in wielding knowledge of intimate moments, and he positioned himself as both confidant and counterbalance, a stabilizing presence to temper the energy of Phyllis's enthusiasm with measured reflection, ensuring that their shared observation could yield insight without immediate destabilization.